Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. The record-breaking government shutdown is finally over. President Trump signed a funding bill last night that was passed by Congress just hours before. Federal employees are getting back on the job as they and those who continue to work through the shutdown wait to learn when they will receive their back pay. Federal food assistance will resume for the millions of people still waiting for their full November payments. Of course, yesterday, a federal judge ruled that the Trump administration cannot force states to undo their delivery of SNAP benefits. Joining me to talk about all of this and much more is Congressman Glenn Ivey, Democrat from Maryland's 4th Congressional District. Congressman Ivey, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Sure thing. Let me just ask the obvious. The vote was not as close as some projected it would be, but other than Republican Andy Harris, the entire Maryland delegation voted against this funding bill. In the aftermath, how would you characterize last night and, the last month and a half or so?
Well, I mean, once the Senate, those 8 Senate Democrats folded, we knew it was going to pass through the House because they have the majority there and there's no filibuster or any other kind of tool that House Democrats could use to stop that vote. And we lost 6, but the caucus, I think the other 210 or so voted against the bill. So I think Hakeem Jeffries, who's our Democratic leader in the House, again, did an outstanding job on holding us together. I think the overall effort, obviously it was tough on people. The government shut down. We got a lot of federal government employees in our area that were missing paychecks, and it was hurting them for sure. At the same time, though, I think a lot of, at least the folks I was running into, and sometimes that was people standing in food pantry lines for federal government employees, were saying, stay strong, we need this fight, because I think they understand a couple of things. One is that, it's interesting, I was hearing a lot of Republicans last night, praising the federal government employees, but everybody also should remember that Donald Trump has fired 200,000 government employees so far, and he's firing them as fast as he can. So, it's been really incredible, the attack on federal government, civil servants. And that's a huge problem that I think we don't want to get overlooked by this last few weeks. The second piece, though, too, is the healthcare issue. Obviously, we were fighting for the extension of the tax credits that allow people to continue to be able to afford coverage under the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. The Republicans had none of that. So many people, if you got those notices in the mail saying your premiums are going to double or triple, the Republicans didn't do anything to change that, and they blocked the Democrats from extending the credits that would have prevented that. So we got an ongoing fight there. Got a few steps left. We'll try the discharge petition soon, which is it's a legislative maneuver that allows the minority to try and bring something to the floor for a vote. But frankly, it's a long shot. But we're going to keep fighting, hoping that the political pressure on the Republicans will force them to do something to address the healthcare mess that they've created.
As it relates to the healthcare issue, before signing the funding bill last night, President Trump spoke about something related to giving money directly to Americans and having them buy their own health insurance. Obviously, there were no details in this plan. I think this is the first that a lot of people were hearing about this. Do you know what he was referring to? And even if you don't know specifically, does what he was suggesting, even as vague as it was, does that Is that something that could possibly fly as a better alternative to the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, which is what people, so many millions of Americans are using right now?
I mean, I don't know what he was talking about. Frankly, I don't think he knows what he was talking about. Remember back during the debates a year and a half ago when he said he didn't have a plan for healthcare, but he had a concept of a plan? Well, I think he doesn't even have a concept of a plan at this point. I think he recognized the power of the healthcare issue and realizes the political impact that's having on his numbers. He's, hovering in the 40% and under, from a polling standpoint, as far as people approving his work. So he's way underwater. But at the other point to remember too is they've been going after Obamacare for 15 years now. And I think there was one Congress where they had 60 votes to get rid of it. They were going to repeal and replace. Remember that phrase?
Yes.
They never figured out what to replace it with, and they were never able to repeal it for that reason. And in the meantime, the American people are like, wow, I'm glad I'm one of those millions of people that now has healthcare coverage. I'm glad that, my kids can stay on my healthcare plan until they're 26. I'm glad being pregnant isn't a pre-existing condition that gets me kicked off my healthcare. I mean, there's a lot of things that came with Obamacare, including the ability to have access to healthcare at all that would be lost. And I think the Republicans, they keep painting themselves into this corner about Obamacare. And obviously Trump hates Obama. Anything related to him, he feels outdone by. So he always feels the need to put it down. But at the end of the day, Obamacare is deeply ingrained in the American healthcare system now. And I think people want to keep it. And I think that's why he's getting the heat, because these people that are seeing their premiums could double or triple in the very near future know they won't be able to afford that and will therefore have to go without healthcare. And they're not going to stand for that. They're going to pick up the phone and call their representatives. And guess what? Many of the people who are going to lose healthcare coverage, they live in red states. They live in red districts and red jurisdictions. And they're going to be calling their Republican senators and members of Congress, hey, fix this now. I can't afford to be at risk of losing my house because, I have a medical incident that I can't pay for out of pocket.
And kind of a follow-up to that, obviously, the Democrats did not get what they wanted as far as even a promise of negotiating this healthcare issue. And so beyond December 31st, when the premium rates begin to double or in some cases triple, as you begin to see the months move forward in 2026, what alternative might Americans have if the Affordable Care Act becomes untenable, unworkable?
Well, the act will stay in place. It's just that millions of people won't be able to afford to stay on it. So, their predictions of it's, rife with corruption, it's going to collapse, is just not going to come to pass. The other problem that they've got is one of the other safety nets that had been in place. They've made the biggest cuts to that in the history of the country. That's the $1 trillion cut to Medicaid. And you've got, I think, $500 million in cuts to Medicare also. So, they've really attacked the healthcare safety net that we have here in the United States. Even people who are working for a living, paying for their coverage, or trying to anyway, are going to get bounced. And that means that people are going to be forced back into the emergency rooms. That'll get covered by people who do have healthcare coverage, which means that we're all going to end up paying more over time. Ultimately, I think that, if we stay on this track and the Republicans continue to try and avoid fixing it, they're going to get punished next year in the November 2026 midterms. They've got a chance to try and address it, but so far they really aren't doing a good job of it. And then if you look back at last week's races, the New Jersey and Virginia governor's races, affordability was a real key to the victories there and in all those races across the country that are down ballot. And that includes not just healthcare, but people are Their grocery prices are going up, rent's going up, mortgages are going up. Gasoline is kind of up and down, but has been going up overall. Inflation's up. I mean, Trump said he was going to fix the economy, but everybody's worse off now than they were 12 months ago for sure. So he's got a big problem. I think he's starting to recognize that. He's too proud to back off the things that are causing those problems, like the tariffs that are forcing grocery prices and other prices up. And I think ultimately he's not on the ballot, so he can't be held accountable, but there are going to be senators and Congress, members of Congress who are. And I think that the American people will punish them for the way they're damaging their pocketbooks right now.
I do want to talk about that a little bit more later, but I want to talk to you about this youth career fair, the Future Ready Youth Career Fair that is coming up on Saturday. Talk to me about what is it, but more importantly, what focusing young people on career trajectories. Why is that so important?
Great question. I mean, I think we have college fairs all the time,
Right.
and that's great. A lot of young kids want to go to college. They're in high school, and their goal is to go to university or HBCUs or wherever, and try and get the next 4-year degree. But not everybody wants that. Not everybody can afford that, and there's a combination of those factors that I think are weighing people to and sort of encouraging them to consider other options. And this career fair is aimed at sort of putting that out there. People who want to do careers, like whether it's with the unions and our utilities or other businesses, doing trades work, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, brick masons, the like. There's a lot of work out there that I think pays extremely well. You don't have to go into the type of debt you do when you go to college, or many colleges anyway. And you've got people who, they're 20, 21 years old, and they're already in the path to making 6 figures per year because they've got a good skill that's in demand. And by the way, won't get preempted by AI in the near future. So I think it's one of those things where we want to give young people, a chance to see that there's a lot of ways to go forward out there. I just came from a meeting with one of the business owners in the county who does a lot of construction work. He says they can't find them fast enough, and we're not training them fast enough. And he was encouraging us to be supportive and do more of these. And I think it's a good way for us to go.
So this event, it's this Saturday from 10 to 1. It's at Crossland High School. It's in the auditorium, and you have to register. It's Ivey, as in your last name, Ivey, CTE, careerfair.eventbrite.com, specifically as it relates to CTE, for those who aren't familiar, the career and technical education. Talk to me just a little bit more about it, and maybe I'm old, but so you and I are kind of in the seasoned boat, but kids are different these days. They're different than they were when you and I were in high school. So what is it that you hope they will get out of this so that they will be able to better not just educate themselves, but to really understand kind of what they call those soft skills?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think, and I may be older than you are, but my grandfather was a brick mason. My father was a brick mason, went into the military, and then put himself through school on the GI Bill. But it was a great trade that was helped to, put our family on the right track over generations. And by the way, when we lived in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, we were across the street from the Booker T. Washington High School, which, as you can tell from the name, was obviously on the black side of town. And the trades were an important aspect of the education for that school. They had people that went to college, but also had people that came out and, went right into the trades. And we want to make sure we give kids those kinds of options. A lot of times kids they're not even aware of these options, frankly, because over time, when you and I were in school, we probably had industrial arts and those kinds of things in high school. In fact, we were required to take them.
Yes.
Somewhere in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, they fell out of favor, and a lot of high schools stopped having them. They are part of it, and they certainly weren't part of the required curriculum in the same way. And everybody was pushing every kid to go to college. I think we're at the point now where we recognize that we're not necessarily trying to push the kids in one direction or another. Let's let all the options be open. Let the kids make the decisions for themselves and see what the best fit is. And as colleges have gotten more expensive, I mean, when my brother went to college, it was $2,000 a year in Virginia. Now, some of my alma maters are like $80,000 a year. And even if you get a huge scholarship opportunity, you can still come out of college with a debt of like $250,000. And for a lot of people, that's just too much. They don't want to take that on.
Congressman, I'm going to let you finish your point. I do need to take a very quick break and remind our listeners that you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. By the way, that career fair at Crossland High School, the Youth Career Fair, will be posted on our website on WHUR.com tonight after 7 o'clock. Stay with us. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation with Maryland Congressman Glenn Ivey. Before the break, you were talking about the cost of college as it relates to some of the opportunities that may be provided by this youth career fair coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I just was talking about how the cost of college has jumped so dramatically over the recent years. I mean, my brother went to school. We were in Virginia at the time. He went to UVA for like $2,000 a year. That's back in the 70s. Now, schools like that are $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. And even if you're in state or you're getting a good scholarship, that can be $30,000 or $40,000 per year. So it's a lot of money. And, sometimes young people don't want to be 21, 22 and have $200,000 or $250,000 in debt over their head. So looking at these kinds of options makes sense economically too, because in some of these, these programs, you can get an apprenticeship. You're being paid to go to school at the same time while you're in the apprenticeship. And as soon as you come out, many of them are going right on to onto work and projects where you're making six figures a year in their late teens, early 20s. And that's an attractive option, and understandably so. So we just want to make sure kids understand that they have a whole range of options out there. Prince George's County Public School System has been supportive of this. I'm teamed up with, County Council member Jolene Ivey, my favorite member of the County Council for obvious reasons. But we want to make sure we present all the options out there to our students.
Let me just share this one bit of information while you were talking. I looked it up. You spoke about your brother going to college on $2,000 a year. I just threw in 1977. So today, that is only $10,719.98. And so when you talk about the cost of a college education, it's so much more than the equivalent of that 2,000 today. I mean, like you said, depending on where you go, it could be, it could be as much as $50,000 a year, $80,000 a year. So yeah, you make an excellent point. And AI can't fix your plumbing. I mean, and we may not be around, long enough when they build the robots that can do that, but or they can't lay bricks. So right. Certainly something to consider. I did want to go back to some of the other things of the day. One of the things that you mentioned that the president was talking about last night, right before he signed the funding bill, he did make reference to the midterms.
Mm-hmm.
He did make reference, to the midterms, and there certainly is a lot of finger pointing. The president was pointing fingers last night. House Speaker Mike Johnson, for the past 42 days, has been pointing fingers at Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Minority Leader's been pointing fingers at Mike Johnson. Just from a personal, perspective, do you think there is any kind of better way, or is this just politics? This is just how we are. The finger pointing, that they did this, you did that. I mean, to be quite honest, even as a journalist, I mean, how many times can you write the phrase, they're still pointing fingers at each other?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair point, and I think it's gotten worse over the years. I first started in politics in 1987, working for Congressman John Conyers from Detroit. And it wasn't, you had a lot of the same stuff, but it's at a new low now, especially with the Trump era. It's worse than I've ever seen. But the point here is the affordability issue. Voters can make their own decisions based on what, they don't have to hear the spin from the Republicans or the Democrats or whatever. When they go in the grocery store, is that basket of groceries cost more than it did, a few months ago or last year? The answer is yes. When you stop at the gas pump, has the price gone up? Is your electric bill up 20%? Yes. Can you afford to rent a place now? And are your kids able to buy a house like you could when you came out of school 30, 40 years ago? Clearly, the affordability issue is going to speak in its own, because, the dollars, when you look at those price tags, it doesn't matter what the Democrats or Republicans are saying to you. If it's more than what it used to be and more than you can afford, that's a problem that you're going to want the politicians to fix. And that's certainly what's going on now with the healthcare issue. People are getting these notices that your monthly payment's going to go up by double or triple what it currently is. They can't afford that. I saw one article, the Post had a print version of it the other day, and it was some guy in Pennsylvania whose monthly payments were supposed to go up from $600 to just over $2,000 per month. And he said, I'm just going to have to drop healthcare coverage because I can't afford to do that. We've got millions of Americans across the country who are going to be in that position. It doesn't matter what Trump said or what whoever said, on the spin or in the press conferences or whatever. They're going to want to ask, who can fix this? The guys who are in the place now who said they were going to fix it, which is the Republicans, have not. In fact, it's gotten worse. And the Democrats need to be there as the option to try and take corrective action for those concerns.
Is it realistic to expect that any of the political parties can really do anything about lowering the price of everyday items? Certainly, one of the big things that the president was saying when he was running this time around is that he said he was going to lower the price of eggs. Well, the price of eggs did come down. The price of gas, as you said, it has certainly fluctuated, but everything else is still high. If there is a change in leadership in the House during the 2026 election, indeed, even in the Senate, what do you believe Democrats can realistically do to drop prices?
Repealing the tariffs. I know your question's a good one because, frequently you go from one presidential administration to another, and there are other forces that are really driving the cost. Here, the tariffs that the Trump administration put in place are really pushing prices up across the board. And I know he said he's doing it to try and get us better deals, but the problem that he's got is he did across the board tariffs on every item, every good coming out of every country in the world at the same time, even though we don't necessarily have any kind of, economic conflict with many of the countries that he went after, say like Canada, for example. So the tariffs on Canada means lumber, out of Canada, which is where we get most of it or much of it, is going to cost a lot more. So guess what? The cost of building new houses is going to go up. Car parts is another one. So guess what? The cost of buying a car, they're talking about, could go up $5,000 or so when the cost of the tariffs, and tariffs just a fancy name for taxes, by the way, that you pay on those items. That's going to make those prices go up too. He even put tariffs on things that we don't grow, like bananas or coffee or chocolate, for example. So prices for all of those are going to go up, even though there's really no benefit. We're not protecting any industry in the United States that's trying to compete in the banana, market or chocolate or coffee markets. So it's just been one of the dumbest things I've seen a president do from an economic standpoint, perhaps in the last 50 years. And he's too proud to back off it. So we've got to fight to force that to happen. One other thing, we got Christmas around the corner. Many of the toys that we buy and give to our kids come from China. Guess what? He's got this big tariff war going with China right now. He tried to back off of that a little bit a couple weeks ago, but there's still like high, multi-percentage tariffs on a lot of goods coming from China. It means that these toys are going to cost more. Some people are not going to be able to get the same kind of Christmas for their kids that they would have before. So it's a self-inflicted wound. Unfortunately, the people who are getting hurt the most by it isn't Donald Trump. It's the American people who are having to buy these goods and pay more to get them.
I want to ask you about the Jeffrey Epstein email that came out yesterday. What are your thoughts on where this whole thing is going, including the Ghislaine Maxwell situation, where it's been reported that she is her attorneys want to ask the president, for a pardon. Obviously, there is no evidence that the president has done anything wrong. He has not been, accused of a crime. But I just want to get your thoughts on just, this is tawdry. Without a doubt, and it does keep growing and growing and growing. What do you believe is the hope that from the Democrats once the Justice Department releases, all of these documents? Obviously, oversight is letting this drip, 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 drip. But what do you want to see come out of this?
The truth. I think we just need to get the documents out. The Trump administration, I had all these people who were saying, we're going to put it out, we're going to put it out, we're going to put it out. And then when it started getting real, they put the brakes on. In fact, yesterday, he was apparently calling members of Congress to try and keep them from going forward with the petition that would make the documents come out, would force the Department of Justice to release the documents. Attorney General Bondi had like binders, and she was saying, hey, the documents are in there, we're just going to release them soon. But as it turned out, all of that was a lie. The binders were empty and they had no intention of releasing them. For people who are saying there's nothing in there and he's not connected to it, they're fighting really hard to make sure nobody gets a chance to see what these documents say. And I got to say, there's a lot of smoke around it too. The documents the information that came out the other day from the Oversight Committee, their emails about Trump, with Trump, talking about his relationships or his interaction with, some of these girls and everything. Okay, there's no direct allegation that he committed a criminal act, but it's pretty clear at this point he knew what was going on. He knew it was criminal, and not just any kind of crime. We're talking about child sexual abuse and rape. Maybe he didn't know all of that, but he knew enough that something was happening, and he should have reported it to protect these girls, especially the one that got taken away from his, as he described it, taken away from his employment and went to work for Jeffrey Epstein. If he knew what was going on with that, how could he have let that girl go into that? It's just, it's incredible what's going on. And then the attacks on the survivors of this stuff, that Trump's lawyers launched. I guess Epstein's lawyers did as well, attacking them personally for just telling the truth about how they've been sexually abused, is awful. It really is just terrible stuff. So at the end of the day, clearly they're going to have to be forced to do this, but the documents should be released. The people can have a chance to decide for themselves what they think about it. Perhaps more importantly, prosecutors can review what's in there and draw their own conclusions. And lawyers representing these these survivors can decide if there are civil causes of action, i.e. lawsuits that should be brought against Epstein, his estate, or other people who are connected to it.
Are you surprised that some of his biggest supporters, specifically Lauren Boebert from Colorado, Nancy Mace from South Carolina, Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia, particularly Boebert and Greene, they were MAGA from the beginning, but on this issue, they have not budged, and they are supporting the release of the Epstein documents. And certainly, I mean, you've seen these members of Congress not only publicly, but you've also seen them, in the course of your work. The fact that they aren't budging on this particular issue or not supporting the president and holding the documents, are you surprised?
I mean, you never know with this kind of stuff, but keep in mind that a year ago, 2 years ago, this was the MAGA line. We're going to release the Epstein files. We want to, put them all out there and everything. And there's, nothing to be seen there, blah, blah, blah. When I get elected, I'll release them. But then all of a sudden, when he got in office, he put the brakes on. And keep in mind, too, that one of the prosecutors who decided not to move forward with the full-blown prosecution of Epstein now works in the Trump administration. So, all of that is something to remember. But, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't understand her personality, frankly. She's a little bit erratic, but, she's really been on the money on the Epstein files. And she, was pushing to it in some ways about the Affordable Care Act piece. I think she ended up voting with the Republicans on that stuff, but at least she spoke out about it initially. So you never know. Like my wife Jolene said, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Maybe this was that time for them on this particular day.
I'm going to talk to you about redistricting. As you know, Governor Moore from Maryland he has appointed, members, including Senator Angela Alsobrooks and a state delegate to examine the whole redistricting process. Maryland only has one Republican Congress member. What are your thoughts on this redistricting process?
Well, I wish we hadn't had to do this, but Donald Trump triggered all of this a few months ago. I think he realized that the House majority is at risk, as the pressure was building up on the healthcare issue over the ACA tax credits. And so he picked up the phone and called the governor of Texas and said, hey, we need 5 House seats from Texas. We need you to redraw the lines now. So this mid-decade redrawing was, I don't want to say totally unprecedented, but highly unusual. But Texas decided to go forward with that. Other Republican states start doing it too. I think we got to fight fire with fire. We can't get cheated out of the House of Representatives majority position again, like we were in 2024. Remember, last year, North Carolina redistricted and took 3 Democratic seats away, so that Republicans could win them. That was the margin for most of the Congress so far, is 3 votes. We would have been in the majority. Hakeem Jeffries would have been the speaker. Things would have been very different than they are right now. So we can't afford them to let them do that again. And, if Maryland needs to participate in that process, then so be it. I think we need to do it.
And allow me a bit of naivete. Growing up saying your vote counts, even if a state eliminates all Democratic congressional seats or all Republican congressional seats, is it possible that the voters could upend all of that? And because, and again, forgive me for being naive. Maybe I just believe so much in fair play. And what happened, whether it's what happened in Texas, the vote that just happened in California. Again, politics seems to be just so much more messy than ever before. Um, do you believe that the voters could, even in those districts, if they change, could by themselves just change who ends up winning office in Congress?
Sure. I mean, anything's possible. And I think some of the states, I'm forgetting which state, backed away from, I think it was Kansas actually, backed away from redistricting because they thought, if we redraw these lines the way they're talking about it, we might have a Democrat take one of these seats away that we were thinking would go to the Republicans. So they decided not to move forward with it. I guess every state's going to have to make that determination. I guess this task force that Governor Moore set up can make that determination as well. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, we've got to make sure that we're doing everything we can to neutralize what the Republicans are doing. Keep in mind, the attack on the Voting Rights Act, and that's before the Supreme Court again. And we know 1/3 of the Supreme Court was appointed by Trump, and 6 members were appointed by Republicans. So it's essentially a Trump Supreme Court. Took up what's left of the Voting Rights Act because the Supreme Court struck down an important part of it. And it looks like the rest of that's going to be gone soon, too. So the Republicans are playing every card. And, they're throwing punches above the waist, below the waist, wherever. We got to make sure we're not just playing by Marcus and Queensberry rules. We've got to make sure if it's going to be a street fight, let's have a street fight. And that's where we are.
Are you at all concerned, as Maryland's Senate President Bill Ferguson said when this first came up, that this could, even if redistricting in Maryland happens and they eliminate that one Republican seat, that it could come back to bite Democrats in the butt?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think the concern that he raised was that the state Supreme Court could throw it out and put in a new map of its own. And the reason he's concerned about that is that 5 of the 7 were appointed by Governor Hogan, who was a Republican. Here's what the legal experts are telling us. If we draw a new map, we'll call it the 2026 map, and it gets appealed and the court throws it out, they'll probably just send us back to the maps that we've got right now. I'll call it the 2022 map. And the reason they won't go and overturn the current map is because it was adopted on the agreement of the Democrats, but also Governor Hogan. So Hogan signed off on the map that we currently have. I think it would be odd for, Supreme Court judges who were appointed by Hogan to throw out the map that he signed off on. But even if they did, the only risk that Ferguson, the state president, raised is that they would throw out the 2022 map and then draw a new map of their own, which would be pretty unprecedented. When they threw out a map before, they sent it back to the legislature and said, try again. I think that's about all that they would do here. And that's all they did. Actually, that's how we got to the map we've got right now. So the 3 steps that he's worried about, I think the likelihood of the 3 of those things happening are slim and none, and Slim just left town.
A final question for you. The Maryland Attorney General, Anthony Brown, has revived this FBI headquarters fight. When President Trump came into office, he basically said, yeah, FBI in Greenbelt isn't going to happen. Talk to me about the legal part of that. Is it possible that a suit to to bring FBI headquarters back to Prince George? Is the idea, the decision, is that really possible?
Yeah, I think we're going to win that suit. Keep in mind that Trump tried to do this in his first term as well.
Yes, he did.
And we beat that back previously as well. So round two basically announced in a tweet that he didn't want it to go to Greenbelt. He wanted it because I think he said Greenbelt was 3 hours away from Washington.
True.
So he did a lot of research and sort of preparation before he made the announcement. But I'm joking about it, but it goes to the heart of the legal claim. There's something called the Administrative Procedures Act that says there's a process that you have to go through as a government official in order to change a ruling that's been put in place. This is a ruling that took 15 years to do. GSA had all kinds of hoops and processes and reviews and decisions over that time frame. At the end of all of that, Greenbelt won fair and square because we were the best site on the merits. And for him to just kind of announce, I don't want to put it there after all, is not rational. And therefore, it falls into the arbitrary or capricious category, I think, that courts strike down those kinds of decisions. And also, the damage to the state of Maryland reasonably relying on the commitment that the federal government had made is a problem too. So I think based on those two things, legal issues, I think we should win the case in court. So we'll see how it plays out. But and the other part I forgot too, Congress actually put in law that you had to pick between three sites. Two were in Prince George's County, one was in Springfield. And the reason they did that is because you didn't have a space big enough to have the type of security campus that you need to have fully protected FBI headquarters. Think in terms of like CIA headquarters or NSA out in Maryland here, where you have a giant campus surrounded by walls and a perimeter that's protected by guards and the like. You want that kind of perimeter. The site they're talking about in D.C. is the Ronald Reagan building. I mean, they've got literally a bunch of flower pots around it. It's supposed to be the barrier to a truck attack along the lines of sort of what Timothy McVeigh did in Oklahoma City. And you can drive straight into the garage, which would be a devastating attack. So if we're going to be serious about security for the most important investigative agency in the United States, that's not the right site for it. The Greenbelt site's the way to go. And I think the courts will understand that and rule in that way.
Maryland Congressman Glenn Ivey, thank you so much for talking to us. It's always good to talk to you. And also certainly good luck this weekend as it relates to the youth conference. Always important. The Future Ready Youth Career Fair. As I said, that information will be on our website on WHUR.com tonight. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. That is the Daily Drum for this Thursday, November 13th. I'm Harold Fisher.